Hello YouTube, my name is Isabella and welcome back to my channel, Stubbornly Bookish. Today I'm going to be finally doing my September wrap-up. Is this going up in late October? Yes. But does that also mean that I'm basically only behind by one wrap-up? Also yes, and I'm so happy about that. I don't think one time this year I've been on time for a wrap-up. And honestly, on time for me just means like, I don't know, a week after the month has ended. I'm doing what I can. Technically this would have been up a little bit earlier, but I took a break from posting videos last week because I just got really tired of staring at my face. Anyway, that's unrelated. I read 6 books and 1 graphic novel in the month of September. I read quite a few things from my library, which is different for me. Ratings were all across the board, like everywhere. And I also happened to read my most anticipated release. So I've got a lot to talk to you about and I'm excited, so let's just jump into it. The first book is honestly one of the reasons why I put off filming this wrap up a little bit. The book is Wilder Girls by Rory Power. I always want to say Powell, it's Power. Wilder Girls is set on an island at this boarding school where this outbreak of something has occurred. Nobody really knows why or what it is, so the girls are actually quarantined from the rest of society and then they can't leave this like fenced in area. At the beginning of our novel, our main character's best friend goes missing and she is determined to find her. Whether or not she has to break this quarantine or not, she is going to find her. This book honestly sounded like it was going to be right up my alley. I love this cover. I love sapphic things and I just was so excited to dive into it. I just had a lot of issues with it, specifically the ending. But before I talk about the ending, I can tell you that I did really like the setting. I liked that it was creepy and sort of malevolent and like the surrounding area was really weird and I thought that was great. It set up a great atmosphere. I really liked how brutal and like gory this was. Our characters are very morally gray. Some of the things they have to do are not like socially acceptable, but in their new society, that's what they have to do to survive, which I thought was pretty cool. In terms of the characters though, I thought they were kind of flat, not really dynamic. Nothing really stands out to me. However, all of the positives of this book really were taken away when it came to the ending of this book. I think the ending sucked. Utterly sucked. Try not to spoil anything, but I can say that I'm fine with open-ended things. I'm fine with not having a lot of answers in my book, but this book, where it left off, was utterly pointless. It felt pointless. It honestly seemed almost as if the author didn't know how to end her story, so she just like stopped it at a random point in time, and I was left with so many questions and I felt honestly pretty cheated. I ended up giving this 1.5 to 2 out of 5 stars. It just really didn't work for me. I'm super disappointed. The next book I read was slightly out of my wheelhouse. It's The Unnie Mooners by Christina Lauren. Just was inspired by all the hype and how everyone was talking about their newest release. So I took it out from the library and loved it. This follows our main character who at the beginning of our story, her sister is getting married. During like the wedding, everyone actually gets super sick. So our main character and the best man actually end up going on to the honeymoon of the bride and groom, but the catch is they don't actually like each other whatsoever. They then have to go on a honeymoon and pretend to be married, and things go exactly as you think they will. But I had so much fun with it. I personally really love a hate to love story. I also think fake dating is a great trope in fiction and movies too, but I just love both those tropes, so them being put together was gold. I read this book. I read it within the span of 24 hours. I was just entertained throughout the entire thing. I thought the characters' dynamic between each other was great. I loved their chemistry. I had a lot of fun with the hijinks and weird, just wacky things that ensued. I will say I wish that the honeymoon portion of this book was a bit longer, and that's kind of like my biggest complaint. I just wanted more of the fun stuff. I also wasn't the biggest fan of the curvy girl rep. She's referred to a lot as a curvy girl, but we're never really told what that means. I don't know if they were trying to go for plus size rep or not. I doubt it. It just didn't seem very well handled. I ended up giving this 4.5 out of 5 stars. I loved it. It was so fun. I can't wait to get my hands on a copy, and frankly I think I could see myself rereading this in the future. The next thing I read was also from the library. I had so many things come in all at once. It was overwhelming to get them read. But I finished The Steel Prince by Victoria Schwab, and it is a graphic novel prequel to the Darker Shade of Magic series. It follows the king in the series as a boy dealing with basically his first outing, like out of the palace, and kind of dealing with like the on the ground stuff and ruling. I actually really enjoyed the story of this. I liked the backstory. I like getting insight into some characters that we don't get a super huge amount from in the Shades of Magic. It's very short, so you don't get a ton from them, but it does kind of help inform Maxton's thinking, I think, at least from what I remember from the series. I always love when there's like an idealistic dummy plus like a jaded swords person who's seen a lot of stuff. I think that's always a really fun dynamic to go off of. The only thing, my biggest complaint actually with this book, is that I did not like the art style at all. I thought it was really hard to follow, super dark, and it just wasn't to my taste. Oh, and like the fight scenes in this were so difficult to follow with the art. It didn't quite work for me. I think I gave this 3.5 out of 5 stars. The next book I read, I'm thrilled to talk about, and it's The Dragon Republic by R.F. Kuang. This was my most anticipated release of the year. I am so excited to have finished it, but also slightly devastated. I love this book. I have a full discussion coming up soon, hopefully. I'm like almost done planning it. There's no proper title, cover, or release date, and I'm slightly panicked that we're not going to get this in 2020, and I just need to know how this ends. It leaves off on such a huge note, not cliffhanger, but like just I need to know what's going to happen in this trilogy in the finale, and I'm freaking out. I forgot to mention this is the sequel to the Poppy War book I loved. I've talked about the Poppy War so much this year, and the Dragon War by proxy, the Dragon Republic. I knew I couldn't predict what was going to go on in here. There was some things that I had a slight idea on, but boy, did I not expect where this book went, and oh my god. I was a little nervous because in the sort of middle section, it gets really militaristic, and I don't love huge, heavily military stories, and this is very military based, like they're going to war. But it really picked up, and I ended up loving this. I gave this 5 out of 5 stars. I know I didn't actually properly review this here, but I've got my whole discussion coming up. So if you're interested in my thoughts, check that out. I'll have it linked when it's live. I love this book. It's so good. So I totally forgot that I read this next book. I read Tunnel of Bones by Victoria Schwab. This is her middle grade series. This is the sequel to City of Ghosts. It follows a 12-year-old girl named Cassidy who actually can see and speak to ghosts. And I really enjoyed the first book last year. I think I gave it 4 out of 5 stars. I did not enjoy this one though. I think it has a lot to do with the narration of the audiobook. I just wasn't jiving with it, which is super annoying because I actually chose to listen to it on Hoopla because of who they had listed as the narrator. Long story short, the narrator is not who they said that was listed on there, so I felt like doubly cheated by it, but I just didn't enjoy her narration. I honestly felt myself sort of just being dragged along. It's a short audiobook, and it took me basically the entire month to finish. I felt like the characters, and specifically her best friend Jacob, sounded super petulant and whiny, and maybe it was the narration, maybe it was the writing, I'm not sure, but I found like just listening to him, and whenever he piped up, I just wanted to roll my eyes and honestly quit reading the book. I'm not actually going to rate this book. It's a middle grade. I am not the intended audience whatsoever for it. The next book I read was The Heart of Betrayal by Mary E. Pearson. This also is the second book in a series. I read a lot of sequels. The first book being The Kiss of Deception, a book I highly enjoyed last year. It follows this princess who runs away from her kingdom and her duties because she's supposed to get married to this guy she doesn't know. And then there's actually the prince she's spurned and an assassin sent after her, and they both actually kind of end up trying to romance her. It's very, very loose fantasy, very romance heavy, but I really enjoyed the first book. This one I didn't enjoy as much. I thought this kind of dragged in places, which is interesting because this actually is a bit shorter, I think, than the first one. It just felt like there was a lot of filler in this book, and I found that to be like really predictable. I knew exactly what was going to happen and nothing really surprised me. There's a lot of just kind of waiting for things to happen, waiting for things to move, and I wanted a little bit more action and gusto and like get moving. I still really like our characters. I think our characters are what make this story. It could be a very, very generic, boring, honestly terrible young adult story with a love triangle. I understand if you love it. I understand if you hate it. I ended up being somewhere in the middle. Thought it was kind of mediocre. 3.5 out of 5 stars. The final book I read in September was a reread for me, and it was a book I've been so hesitant to reread for so long. It's The Handmaid's Tale by Margaret Atwood. I've been intending to reread this for such a long time. It's a book I've heralded as one of my like top 3 favorite books of all time. I've been wanting to reread it even before the sequel was announced, which I'll get to. I read it in October. It was my first read of October, and spoiler alert, didn't love it. I also really liked rereading this as an adult, someone older. I think I read this first when I was like 17, 18 in high school. I still really enjoyed it. I think the writing in here is honestly genius. It's so brilliantly written. The limited scope, the underlying unease and sheer terror that is built in this book is just so well done. I just am now having a really difficult time separating the sequel from this book. And if this was still a standalone, I think I would remain this at a full 5 out of 5 stars, absolute favorite book of all time. But the sequel kind of has ruined it a little bit for me, which is a little sad. Don't know if I'm sticking with the rating of 5 out of 5 stars. It's staying there right now on Goodreads, but I don't know if it'll last. I'm nervous. I don't know. So that's it for all the books that I read in September. A lot from my library, which isn't usually what I do, but everything came in so quickly and I just had to get them read. And with mixed results, I will definitely say. I'd like to know if you have any thoughts on any of the books that I've read. Please let me know down in the comments below. If you want to talk the Dragon Republic, it's coming. I'm so excited to talk about this book. That's it for me today. Thank you so much for watching. I really, really appreciate it, and I will see you again soon. Bye.